this piece of technology has supported aging in place like no other. People want to stay in their homes, and throughout the pilot, we saw people who could continue to remain at home, and children who could be reassured that, in fact, they were safe and secure. I think sometimes placements in long-term care occur because the children are uneasy about them remaining in their home. And so things may have occurred premature.
What it meant for us is he got to stay home 2 extra years because he'd had to go somewhere, a special care home or somewhere before, because it was at the point that we needed something. So he got to stay 2 more years until he died in his home, and that's exactly what he wanted. So it was perfect.
You know, she was just so happy to be able to be home, and so I'm really, really happy, because I had told her I would try to look after her at home, and I'm almost 100% sure I couldn't have done that without the CareLink. I'm quite sure I couldn't have.
If we had had to do this whole setup not using CareLink Advantage, if we had to have somebody here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, we would not have been able to keep her at home near as long.
That was what he wanted. He wanted to be on the island. He didn't want to be in New Brunswick. He loved PEI. So really, if we didn't have the system in place, he wouldn't have been able to, he wouldn't have been able to be at home where he wanted to be. So that was quite a gift. And as a family, to be able to, it's really hard to make all those decisions when you're the caregiver and power of attorney. And to be able to take into account what they wanted and to be able to give them what they wanted was huge for me. So for Dad to be able to die at home was amazing.
We in New Brunswick right now are looking at all kinds of approaches to keep people in their home longer, which is where they want to be. And in many ways, we're now allowing children to play an active role where in the past, unless they were geographically located, within a short driving distance, they would be limited to a phone call as opposed to an opportunity to do the monitoring by exception when there was a problem.
So we talked about getting a system right away after I heard what it could do without even really seeing it, because I knew that we needed something to help my parents, and I also knew they wanted to go home. There was no medication compliance, none, zero. They would, actually Mom spent 2 weeks taking Dad's medication once, and we didn't know. So, and he didn't know, neither one of them knew, because they both had dementia, right? So he was taking hers, she was taking his.
He was home, but we were having trouble with him falling down. And maybe he'd lay all night on the floor because we didn't know whether he was out of bed. We had the home care workers. They were coming, getting his meals and getting that part of it, which worked great. But when they went home at night, that was when we were having difficulty knowing.
Whenever I had them come and assess Mom, they suggested the CareLink Advantage to me. The other system where you push a button, and I thought that it wasn't any use to my mother because she wouldn't know enough to push the button if she was in stress.
There's no question in my mind, and I have felt that from the very beginning, that this was a tool that was going to save money. And I think where we saw throughout the pilot, people who had been positioned and had been recommended for nursing home long-term care placement at the cost of, probably $6,000–7,000 a month. And they actually carried on quite nicely in their family home, which is where they wanted to be.
It made more sense than bringing in care all the time. because we could monitor everything until things get to a certain point. And yeah, people do need to go into care at some point, but this allows them to be where they want to be for a lot longer. So it allows them to be happier in their own environment and to be able to provide that for a fraction of what care costs are, because really bringing someone in is costly. Bringing someone in full time, you know, to have someone even while they sleep at night.
If we hadn't had it, I would have had to have 24-hour care for her, and it would have had started probably in February, March. This way we got to keep her home from February until November the 5th. And if it hadn't have been for CareLink, we wouldn't have been able to do that.
One of the most unique things about CareLink Advantage and the tool itself is that the senior doesn't have to do anything. The senior just gets to live their life, which is exactly how it's supposed to be. My sense is that, you know, from what I've heard throughout the pilot that New Brunswick did, was that the technology was in no way a barrier. It, in fact, it became very reassuring to people that the senior actually living in the home would relate that they felt comfortable remaining there, because now they knew that if anything were to happen, that their son or daughter or whoever was looking in on them would be able to know that there was a problem.
He did not want any care workers around. He was not interested in having anyone around. So this was a much better alternative for him, to not have someone in his space, to be able to just be in his home and live there and come and go and not have anyone interfering in his daily routine. But still, as a family, we knew he was safe and Mom was safe, and we could keep an eye on them from a distance.
Before, if he fell in the night, he knew that I had no way of knowing whether he was on the floor or not. The thing for us is when we was able to get CareLink and get that security. And for him and for us. He really enjoyed the fact that knowing that I could see him on camera, because it made him feel good to think that I could see him, and if he fell, that I would be there in a reasonable amount of time to help him. So it was security for him as well. He was happy and content. He was able to stay on the old homestead on the farm, and that was his life. That's what he enjoyed. So he was able to do that right to till 92 years of age.
The door was locked, but she still had a concern that someone might get in. But when I told her that we would know, that we would be called if the door opened at night, and she really, that meant a lot to her. But it was not intrusive at all to her.
I think this system allows people to just be. I think it places some of the caring responsibility on the families who want to remain engaged, and it does it in a way that is by exception, as opposed to having to know about each movement throughout the home. And I think that you know, that's going to be the way that we're going to keep families involved and I guess, and protect them from the caregiver fatigue, which then forces a placement in a long-term care. We often don't think about the ripple effect that occurs with family members who have placed their loved ones in long-term care, and we know there's a lot of guilt and anguish that goes along with that. And so I think from an overall perspective, when people are allowed to age in place, and this is an integral part of that I think the well-being of not only the senior but those who are around and supporting them is greatly improved.
Well, it was peace of mind. I called her every night at 9:30, and lots of times she wouldn't answer, and I was going up and checking on her. So it saved me numerous trips and the worry of what you'd find when you got there, and kept less stress here. And it just gave peace of mind, even for my brother.
So it allowed me to transfer that responsibility at times. And if we were, you know, set to go away on a family vacation, I could just go online and just tick the little box, take it off my cell phone number and send it to my brothers or send it to my sisters. So they then became the one getting all the alerts from the system, and then they could also participate, which was really important for them because they were so far away. Families want to help. Siblings want to be able to help share the responsibility. But when you're far away and you can't physically be there, what can you do? Well, the system allowed them to be able to do something. You know, it doesn't replace someone being there. We still needed to check on them. We still needed, you know, someone to be there. But it certainly allowed us more hours away, and it allowed us larger windows of time. Someone didn't have to be around 24/7 because the system was in place. And the alerts on the system would let us know if there was a problem.
For us, it was great, because up until that point, I couldn't ever lay down at night and relax sleeping, because I didn't know whether he was in bed or on the floor. One night, the alarm come on, and they called and said that he'd been out of bed more than 15 minutes or 20 minutes, whatever I had it set for. So I get up and went over, and he was on the bathroom floor. And so I said to Dad, I said, what happened? Well, he said, I came in, he said, I fell asleep on the flush and fell off the flush. Well, as soon as he was on the floor, he couldn't get back up again. And so I was able to go in, stand him up, get him cleaned up, get dressed, get him back in bed. And everything was great. But normally, he would have laid there all night. And he had, before we got CareLink, there was times that he had laid all night. He fell one night, and it wasn't until morning when I went over to check on him in the morning that I went in and found him on the floor. He'd been there all night. It just took a whole lot of the stress, and for me, because I was always here wondering, you know, is he all right? Is he fell or what? You know. But once we got the system, then I could go to bed, go to sleep, and just rested a whole lot better, a lot more security.
It was just the security of knowing that, okay, this system's working, I don't have to worry about it, I can go to sleep and know that if she even tries to get out of the house, I'm gonna get a call. To me, the whole system gave me a sense of security. It made me know that my mother was safe, that during the day she had caregivers, but during the night she was here by herself. So it gave me the sense of, okay, she's going to be all right, because if she goes to open a door, I'm going to get a phone call. Or if she happened to fall down the stairs, I will know within a short amount of time something's happened. Just a sense of relief. It was just like, oh, you can sit back and take a breath and say, oh, you know, she's safe. And that's the world. That's all you need, is just to know that they're safe. Once you go to bed, you can lay your head down and say, okay, if she decides to get up and move around, she's going to be all right. If she decides to open a door, I'm going to know it. And that just gives you the ability to sleep at night. Yeah, that's a big thing, be able to sleep at night.
When I first saw CareLink Advantage, and I saw the tool, I was very excited, and I knew intuitively that it was a tool that was going to help in supporting aging in the communities.
I think they would have had to go into care, really, because the point at which we were at as a family was that we were having to be around all the time to check on things. when you're busy and you're working and you're raising a family and you're walking the dog and you're doing all these other things and volunteer work and trying to be everything to everyone. So without the system in place, there was no way that we would have been able to care for them as long as we did. To be able to say, I can decide what's best for them, but I can also give them what they want. So that was huge, because we wouldn't have been able to do that. We would have had to put them in care a lot earlier. And Dad was able to stay out of care totally until he became ill and was hospitalized and passed away. With the system in place, we were able to bring her home here with us after Dad passed away in Prince Edward Island. We were able to give her those additional 8 months here, as well as being able to give Dad what he wanted, dying in PEI, where he loved to be.
I still can't believe we actually were able to do that. And it came along right at the time that we needed it. And it just was nothing but positive. There was nothing negative. It was just low maintenance. It was reassuring. It was peace for us, and it kept her home till she died. So I guess that's it in a nutshell.
We was at the point where we had to have something where we could monitor him and make sure he didn't fall, and if he did, that he didn't lay there. And that was the lifesaver for that. And that meant that he could stay home for that extra 2 years until he passed away. But and that was his wish. He always wanted to stay in his own home until he died. And so with the help of CareLink, we was able to fulfill that wish right up to the very end.
And it's all going to be able to be done without asking the senior to do anything other than just go about their daily life. So, you know, we don't have to ask them any questions. They just get to be who they are, and we get to support them to age gracefully, happily, healthily in their own home, and by supporting the people that love them with technology. And I think that's the best we could ever hope for.